Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Big Game Bound. It's week 9 of the NFL season, and we still have 2 undefeated teams, the Patriots and 49ers, and 2 winless teams, the Bengals and the Dolphins. And you know they play each other 3 days before Christmas. Coming up on this week's show, we'll tell you who won the AFC and NFC Players of the Week. Ty Halleck joins us to talk about the trade deadline, which teams missed out on a big opportunity to help itself. We'll bring in our big game correspondents to break down the big matchup between the Patriots and the Ravens. Our big guest is Jeff Stoneback, director of the MGM Race and Sportsbook. How does Vegas set the lines for these NFL games? How do they get it so right so often? And Bob Harris of Football Diehards will help you set up your fantasy football lineup for this week. Let's start with our big shout-outs. And how about the Bosa brothers, Joey and Nick? They were both honored by the NFL this week. Joey had 7 tackles and 2 sacks in the Chargers win over the Bears on Sunday. He's the AFC Defensive Player of the Week. Nick won Defensive Player of the Week honors in the NFC. He had 3 sacks and an interception in the 49ers blowout victory over the Carolina Panthers. The NFC Offensive Player of the Week is Green Bay's Aaron Jones. 226 yards in total offense and 2 touchdowns as the Packers pick up a road win in Kansas City. This is the 2nd time Jones has won this honor this season. The AFC Offensive Player of the Week is Steelers running back James Conner. He helped the Steelers defeat Miami on Monday night with 145 yards rushing and a touchdown. All right, let's bring in Ty Halleck now. For what the Halleck, Ty played 7 seasons in the National Football League with the Lions, Jaguars, and Bears, and we talked to him about various topics each week. And Ty, Tuesday was the trade deadline. Really nothing happened, one minor deal for Aqib Talib, but which team lost by not making a move?
You know, I was surprised by a couple of teams that could have made some moves. The Denver Broncos. You had, Chris Harris, the cornerback. Certainly a lot of people are always looking for those better quarterbacks in the National Football League. And then Von Miller even really, he's kind of getting to the tail end of his career. Certainly there's some upside there, pending on which team you needed, i.e. the Detroit Lions, maybe even another pass rusher or an opportunity for some other guys out there. So there are some teams that I think that it was true to form in the National Football League in terms of not having a lot of trades here at the trade deadline. There had been some trades along the way, but there are some teams that I felt like should have really dealt something. The Lions were one of those. The Cleveland Browns were one of those. The Denver Broncos we just talked about. So there's some teams that are surprising. Even the New York Jets could have did some stuff with Jamal Adams, potentially to the Dallas Cowboys. So multiple teams kind of stood pat, if you will, and didn't make moves. But always kind of interesting in and around this time. But I think enough bodies have moved in the last few weeks that you kind of got what was going to get done.
Yeah, it looked like the Lions were also linked to Adams as well, but they just stood pat, and Slay is still there. All right, Steelers won back-to-back games for the first time this year. Do you think this team has turned the corner, or was it just kind of they had a weak part of the schedule?
You know, it's kind of tough to tell because of that weak part of the schedule. It's kind of an up and down deal, and it makes you wonder kind of how they fit in with the Baltimore Ravens, and that's going to be to be determined. I mean, look, the problem for them right now is not just Mason Rudolph and maybe a little bit of his inconsistency, and certainly he stepped up when needed after starting off so slow against the Miami Dolphins, but it's really the running back situation. What do they do there, too? You talk about teams that maybe needed or could have done something at the running back position. They've had multiple guys go down, and with Connor now out with the AC sprain and his backup as well, you're down to kind of minimal guys. So what are they going to do there without the running game? I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers have always been defense run game. I'm just not sure what they do with the inconsistent play of the quarterback and now not having a running game. That's going to be very tough for them.
All right, Dallas Cowboys, one of those teams, they've got so much talent. They got off to the fast start, looked really good, and then all of a sudden they just kind of laid an egg. Well, the last time they played at MetLife Stadium against the Jets, they absolutely were horrible. Lost that game. Now they've got to go back there to play the Giants. What do you want to see from the Cowboys this week and going forward?
Well, I think for the Dallas Cowboys, it all comes through the running game. I mean, they have to feed Elliott. They got to make sure that they're running the football. I mean, Dak Prescott at the end of the day is best when they run the football and he's able to kind of move the ball down the field with play action pass. Look, the New York Giants come off what I would consider a confidence-filled game from the Detroit Lions, and Daniel Jones, who they bench Eli Manning, and they come with Daniel Jones, their first-round draft pick. Look, 4 touchdowns. he played very well, threw for almost 300 yards. I think those guys are building confidence, and with Saquon Barkley, the Dallas Cowboys, it's not a shoo-in. So whatever they did with the Jets scenario, they better wipe off their plate for the New York Giants. It's a divisional game, and you have, again, I think a team that is a little bit younger and is getting some confidence, and they've got some playmakers. So they're going to have to do that by running the ball and keeping, I think, the New York Giants off the football field.
All right, let's go to your top 5. No more circling the wagons with the Bills. They drop out.
Yeah, they dropped out. They kind of stubbed their toe with the New England Patriots, still head of the class when you talk about the top. It's the bottom part of it that gets interesting. You know, do you go with Baltimore, Seattle, the Kansas City Chiefs, who, yes, they lost to the Green Bay Packers, but they did it with a backup quarterback who was really, quite frankly, babysitting one of his 7 kids here just a couple months ago. But I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings at 5, Green Bay Packers at number 4. Both in the NFC North, obviously both playing very well. Minnesota's probably one of the hotter teams in the National Football League right now. The New Orleans Saints, they got Drew Brees back, even with thumb tape. He's doing great. The San Francisco 49ers, I could make an argument that this good young team, through Shanahan and what they're doing both offensively and defensively, could be number 1, but I'm sticking with the New England Patriots. Their defense has just been lights out. They've been doing historical numbers and shutting down people, and they still have Tom Brady healthy. You got to stick with New England at number 1.
And you like the 49ers more than the San Francisco with the Drew Brees, huh?
I really do, and the reason why is because of Nick Bosa, who, quite frankly, is making an argument for Defensive Rookie of the Year. What he's doing defensively right now is unbelievable. He's got an interception. When you look at his stats, 20 tackles, 7 sacks, a forced fumble. The guy's been playing unbelievable. Another one of those young players on the San Francisco 49ers, I think, is just showing top-end talent.
The biggest game on the schedule in Week 9 pits the undefeated Patriots against the 5-2 Ravens, a battle of first-place teams on Sunday Night Football on NBC. Yanni Caracas covers the Patriots for WPRI-TV. Damon Turbot covers the Ravens for WHTM. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. And we'll start with you, Yanni. The Patriots defense has been the talk of the league, but Baltimore tight end Nick Boyles said, and I quote here, "We'll see how good they are once we play them. I don't think they've seen anyone like our offense or Lamar Jackson." Any chance that ends up on a bulletin board? Does that have any impact against a team like the Patriots?
I think 100% chance it ends up on a bulletin board because, if anything, it re-energizes the Patriots defense. Everyone's telling them how good they are. Rightfully so. They're playing at a historic mark in terms of yards per game, points, turnovers, etc. So if someone can tell them, hey, you're not all that good, I think that's going to light a fire underneath them. So absolutely. And listen, this is a team that's always looking for an edge. Tom Brady last year, famously after beating the Chargers in the divisional round of the playoffs, said, everyone thinks we stink. Well, no one thinks you stink. You've won, at that time, had won 5 Super Bowls. But if any way he can find an edge, the defense or anyone in that Patriot locker room, they definitely will use it.
Yeah, Damon, did Harbaugh have anything to say to his tight end?
Well, first of all, I just want to expand upon that a little bit more. Didn't we just learn this lesson with the Browns last week? I mean, they said, oh, yeah, we're going to beat the Patriots. Well, look what happened to you. They got absolutely destroyed. So apparently they're just going to test the Patriots every week, talk their junk, and then I guess everyone's just going to get handed an L. The bulletin board material is something that, like Yanni said, is something that the Patriots have always fed on for the better part of 20 years now. So I'm sure Harbaugh was probably like, could we just not mention that and maybe just go out there and play it on the field? I would assume maybe there's something going on behind the scenes in terms of telling them to calm down a little bit, but now they've said it, so they got to go play.
All right, so the Ravens have scored 30 or more points 4 times this season already. They've topped the 50-point mark. The identity of this franchise has always been defense. This year, it's offense carrying the load. How'd they make this transition, and how's it being accepted by the fan base?
Well, first of all, I think it goes back to maybe that quote that Mr. Boyle just said. I think it has a lot to do with people like Lamar Jackson, the additions of these young wide receivers who are panning out very well. Obviously, you have very multiple tight ends, and then you add a guy like Mark Ingram in the backfield. They've kind of built something very nice around Lamar Jackson, who they know and everybody else knows is unique, and that's exciting, and that has been the biggest reason for the jump. And, you know, that's a good point that this has always been a defensive football team. But I think Ravens fans have accepted defense for such a long time because they were winning. I mean, that was the key to the ultimate heights, Super Bowls, things of that nature. So, you know, Ravens fans are just very excited around here just because they're winning football games again, and that's really their benchmark.
Yeah, I think any fan base will accept scoring 10 points if your defense only gives up 9. Yanni, we talked at the start of the season about this defense. You mentioned there was some concern because Belichick hadn't hired a defensive coordinator. I'm not sure anyone outside of the New England area can name 5 players that start on that defense. You've got some cast-offs from Detroit. You've got a cast-off from Cleveland. How are they this good?
Everyone is just, Bill Belichick was asked that question the other day, and he said really good players. It's everyone playing cohesively to their best ability. They haven't had any injuries, and Jamie Collins, who is new this year, back in his second stint with the Pats, has been unbelievable coming over from the Browns. Kyle Van Noy has been unbelievable at linebacker, a cast-off from the Lions, and Dante Hightower. So those 3 linebackers, they call themselves the Boogeymen. They've been key. And what the Patriots are doing, besides just limiting points, is they're scoring touchdowns. In fact, when they scored their most recent touchdown against the Browns Sunday, at that point in the season, defense had 4 touchdowns and they had only given up 3. So not only are they stingy, they're turning the ball over at a historic rate, and they're actually getting in the end zone.
I know I'm in Michigan, and I never saw Van Noy play like this in a Lion uniform. Damon, the AFC North isn't exactly taking over the league. Ravens are the only team with a winning record. How do they avoid the letdown of thinking this division's already won?
Well, a lot of it is, for one, going out and playing this weekend. I mean, this game against the Patriots is going to be a big point because now the Steelers are starting to win some football games, albeit it wasn't too sure for a while against Miami on Monday night, but that's a team that's starting to win some football games. Their defense has done some things to keep them in this division race, and a loss this week for the Ravens means that the Steelers, I believe, get within 1 game. Now, the Ravens do have the tiebreaker there, but it kind of just starts building this piece by piece because it's not over yet, but they are definitely the favorites when you're looking at their 5-2 record, first of all, and the fact that they beat the second-place team head-to-head, and Baker Mayfield's walking out of press conferences, so I think we can kind of shoo the Browns away from the race, and the Bengals are the Bengals. So it's probably just starts with a very slow, I mean, I sound like a player here, but a week-by-week approach. You got to get past New England because you want to continue to build that division lead, but after that, it's they're going to beat a lot of teams down the stretch, but they've got to win these big games here, and that'll be a difference maker at the end of the season.
Now, last questions for you, Yanni. Tom Brady, not exactly the marquee name, right? I mean, he's obviously the marquee name, but not really the reason that the Patriots are winning. It's that defense. Is he okay with that?
Is he okay with that? That's a good question. He's okay with winning and being 8-0, but he is certainly not happy or content with the way the offense is played. A lot of that has to do with injuries on the offensive line, where in Sunday's game against the Browns, they had 3 backups there. They're just not running the ball as well as they did last year. Their fullback, James Devlin's out for the year, so they've had troubles running the ball. And then it's been, you know, sort of in and out at receiver. They had the Antonio Brown experiment that went wrong, and N'Keal Harry, the rookie, is coming back off injured reserve. He's going to make his debut, and then they just got Mohamed Sanu, so it's been hard to have any sort of continuity other than just Julian Edelman. So he's certainly frustrated, but it almost comes full circle to the early years of these Patriot dynasty when it was more defensive-centric in 01, 03, and 04. So he holds himself and his offense accountable, but he's happy that the team, of course, is winning week to week.
Yanni, Damon, thanks. Can't wait to watch this game on Sunday night. Our big guest this week is Jeff Stoneback, director of MGM Resorts International Race and Sportsbooks, and he joins us from Las Vegas. Jeff, how important is the NFL to sportsbooks like yours?
The NFL drives the bus. It's the majority of our wagering is on football, and I'd say about half of it, or maybe about 60% of it, is on the NFL, 40% on college. But football season is it. It's the majority of our win. We probably hold about 70% of our win comes from football.
All right, the Raiders are making the move to Las Vegas. Is it about time, or is this a bold move by the NFL and Mark Davis?
Well, you could say it's about time. We had the NHL here, the Golden Knights came in, and the town has just gone nuts over the Golden Knights. And there are a lot of people, fans in this town that are Raider fans. It's kind of like a Raider town. So I think it's going to be pretty big. And one thing about what we get with the Knights, too, we get a lot of teams, fans from out of town come in and for the weekend or just watch a game here. So it's going to drive a lot of people to town here. It's going to be a big deal.
You say the NFL drives the bus. How big is that bus on Super Bowl Sunday at a sports book?
Oh, that's a triple-decker bus there on Super Bowl Sunday. Yeah, it gets pretty crazy. You know, everybody comes out for the Super Bowl. We've always said if you can't go to the Super Bowl, the best place to go is Las Vegas. But, obviously there's other jurisdictions and states around here where there's legalized wagering on football now. But Nevada has been the best place to go ever if you're not going to make it to the Super Bowl itself.
How does it compare to, say, a Cinco de Mayo when a big Mayweather fight was taking place?
Oh, it's much bigger. The Cinco de Mayo, you got a combination. Usually when they have those big fights on Cinco de Mayo, you've got not only the Kentucky Derby, but you've got the big fight event. It's very busy, but the Super Bowl, it goes on for a few days. People start rolling into town on Thursday, big crowds on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Some of them don't leave till Tuesday. Whereas on the fights, you've got just that weekend crowd. So it's a much bigger event. Even though it's a one game, it kicks off and plays for 3 hours. It fills up the town for 5 or 6 days.
There's always a lot of crazy prop bets on a Super Bowl Sunday. What's the craziest one MGM has offered up?
Probably some of those cross sports. I couldn't tell you specifically off the top of my head, but it's always those crazy ones where are the example, the Patriots going to score as many points as LeBron James points, or those are the ones that get people talking, is those cross sport ones where you've got the Super Bowl game tied into usually something that's played earlier in the day. And it's always usually a player prop to team points or something like that. But those are the ones that people like to talk about.
Jeff, if you watch a Bad Beats segment on Scott Van Pelt's show on ESPN, you see how close you guys are with that line. How in the world do you get it right so often?
Well, actually, we really don't want it to fall on the point spread, because usually if it falls on the point spread, we get sided or middled on the game. So, but yeah, it does come down to a play or two, a point or a half a point here. The odds usually are made offshore is where most of the odds are made, and everybody kind of not follows, but basically base their lines upon what those odds are out there already. So it's like what we do in the morning. We come in and there's posted odds somewhere. So we'll just shade what way we like. Let's say if they're going to, Patriots are 6.5, and we know they're going to bet the Patriots this week, we may hang the line 7. So once we do that, money moves the line there. But yeah, it does come down to the point spread quite often, but everybody is amazed how it happens. But really, when it falls on that point spread, we don't like it, because that means we're not winning, because we're handing some money back.
Now we're seeing more and more states allowing sports betting. Has that hurt Las Vegas?
It hasn't. Actually, our handle is up this year over previous years. It just keeps growing. And what it does is it gets people more educated on sports betting, gets them into it. People, maybe let's say Indiana's got sports betting, so somebody may make a bet now and that they hadn't made before in their home state, and then they come out to Nevada and they're educated, and they'll come up and they won't feel as intimidated as they were before when they look up at the board and they say, oh, what does that 140 mean, or what does that plus 120 mean? So people will become more educated on it, become more familiar with it, and we're still getting people coming out here. So that'll give them an inclination to make a wager on the sports while they're here. So it's it hasn't hurt us at all.
Jeff, I'm not sure if you're allowed to bet, but if you were, which NFL team do you wish you would have placed a bet on before the season? Which bet that somebody made stands to gain the most if that team goes on to win the Super Bowl?
Well, the Packers were pretty high. They were around 25-1 or so before the season started. They're down to 8-1 right now. So I would like to have a Packer Super Bowl bet at 25-1 sitting in my pocket.
Jeff Stoneback, he runs the sports book for MGM. Thanks for joining us on Big Game Bound.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, time to help you out with your fantasy football questions. Bob Harris of Football Diehards joins us. Trade deadline has come and gone, Bob. Which deal that was made, nothing big happened on Tuesday, but which deal earlier really caught your eye, and which one will be best for the players that got dealt, like, say, a Kenyon Drake?
Yeah, the deals that didn't happen were the ones that we're all talking about. No Trent Williams moved by Washington. There was talk that Le'Veon Bell would be available, Robbie Anderson. The Jets were maybe wholesale moves and nothing. So it was zero, dud city. So we can fall back. We did get the Kenyon Drake was traded to the Arizona Cardinals on Monday. We kind of got a little foreshadowing of that when the Steelers left him at home, and we kind of felt the same maybe about O.J. Howard, when the Bucs sat him Sunday, nothing there. But Drake goes to Arizona where there's a need. Chase Edmonds was hurt against the Saints. David and Johnson already hurt. They have a short turnaround to Thursday, so it looks like they'll be without those guys. And that left them with Zach Zetter and Alfred Morris. Now, none of these three guys, Drake, Zetter, and Morris, have a really strong knowledge of the offense, so my guess is they'll put it in a package. But if you want to play Drake this week, it's a prime spot. Unfortunately, it's San Francisco's defense, not a prime matchup. Still, desperate times call for desperate measures. There's teams on buys, there's attrition. So if you need to force Drake in, this will be the week to do it.
All right, we're halfway through the season. Which players are you expecting to have a big second half?
Look, I think, some of this, what I'd like to do with these, just what I'm trying to think of players. I don't actually think of players. I like to look at teams and look at their schedule going forward. If you go to footballdiehards.com, we have a tool there that gives you an ease of schedule going forward. If you look at that right now, Jaguars, Browns, Buccaneers, Seahawks, Giants, Jets, all have favorable matchups. Not the greatest, prospects on all those teams, but for guys like Leonard Fournette, maybe some hope for players like Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. Nick Chubb's been tearing it up. Should be an easy path for him as long as he holds on to the football. For the Seahawks, the guys we love, Chris Carson has been tearing it up. He has just a really nice path all the way in through the Week 16. We like to look out that far. You see they're playing Arizona, great matchup for running backs. So I'm looking more at ease of schedule than at individuals at this point because crazy things can happen between now and then, and maybe there'll be some outliers who pop up, guys due to attrition that get a chance to excel given these favorable matchups down the stretch.
All right, Bengals announced they are benching Andy Dalton. What does that mean for Bengals players like, say, Joe Mixon?
I don't know if there's any hope. Joe Mixon coming off a decent game against the Rams, his first decent game in a while, but it had been so bad up to that point. The offensive line's been a big issue heading into the Week 8 game, heading into the game against the Rams. He was getting hit at or behind the line of scrimmage on 31+% of his attempts. That's an NFL high, you'll not be surprised to learn. So I don't have a lot of hope. Look, I don't have a lot of hope for the Bengals. A.J. Green comes back, right? They're scheduled down the stretch, not incredibly favorable, kind of middle of the road. So I don't have a lot of hope for Mixon. What you're playing when you play Joe Mixon right now is just volume. And look, he might score a touchdown. We saw it against the Rams on a pass. That's his second touchdown catch on the year. So he is capable, but you're playing the volume, and we're not getting a lot of satisfaction in terms of fantasy points outcome.
All right, we got a question off Twitter from Steve. He's looking to shake things up. He would give up Carson Wentz, Hunter Henry, Emmanuel Sanders, and Phillip Lindsay. In return, he gets Aaron Rodgers, Le'Veon Bell. Your thoughts?
Ooh, that's giving up a lot of players, but you're getting a lot back in return. I love the way Aaron Rodgers is playing right now, but again, I'm not that keen on quarterbacks. I don't know if he's getting enough of an upgrade with Le'Veon Bell, given the poor play of that offense. We talked about players getting traded. I wanted to mention, too, Sanders is one of them. Mohamed Sanu is another, and you kind of look at how these things play out sometimes with trades. For Sanders, he goes into an offense. He comes from Denver. Scangarello, the offensive coordinator there, was the quarterback. Rick Scangarello was the quarterback's coach in San Francisco prior to that. He goes right into the 49ers, knows Kyle Shanahan's, at least the verbiage and kind of the overall goals of the offense, performs pretty well in Week 1. Sanu, he earned Tom Brady's trust immediately. We saw him catch a fourth down pass. I think these are little things you look for when players get traded. As far as that trade, I think you're giving up too much.
All right, again, this is Bob Harris. You can catch him every week on our show. You can also hear him on Sirius XM radio from 6 to 8. You can also follow him on footballdiehards.com. Bob, thanks for joining us. See you again next week. That'll put a wrap on Week 9 of Big Game Bound. We'll be here every week through the NFL season, streaming a new episode at 1 o'clock on Thursday. A big thanks to Yanni Caracas and Damon Turbot, our Big Game Bound correspondents, to our big guest, Jeff Stoneback, our analyst, Ty Halleck, and our fantasy football expert, Bob Harris. For our producer, Spencer Wheelock, and our studio crew, I'm Jack Doles. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Enjoy another great weekend of action from the National Football League.